Hello, welcome to our next webinar in the series. I'm Linda Mannering, and we're very happy to have you joining us today. We have Nancy Kadel, Bonnie Robson, Paula Thomson, and Peter Lewton-Brain, who are going to talk about navigating the new normal and getting back to life in the studio with COVID-19 lurking in the background and the foreground. And we're very respectful, and we acknowledge that there are a number of different opportunities for all of you, and there are those of you who have the opportunity to go back into the studio and to your company, and we're going to talk to you primarily today, but we also recognize that there are those of you who are freelancers and you don't have anywhere to go, and there are also those of you who may have to completely retool and you just don't know what you are going to do, and we're going to address those definitely in another webinar, but we are going to address those of you today who are returning to some sort of activity within your company, within the studio, within a training regimen, and try and address the important issues that we can provide you with some guidance on. And today we're going to start with a question that addresses how is it that I adapt to change in this new normal situation. And Bonnie Robson, Dr. Robson is going to address this question for us. So welcome, Bonnie. Thank you for being here with us again today.
Thank you, Linda. It's a pleasure. As you say, as we begin to leave our homes, we're going to have to adapt our expectations to include changes. Some of us will embrace the changes and really love it, and others of us are going to be more cautious and perhaps even hesitant. And I want to talk for a minute about your thinking style and how that might predict how you cope. There are three styles of thinking: logical, analytic, and creative. Now imagine you're learning a new combination and you're a logical thinker. So the logical thinker gets the information, tries it out, gets some feedback, changes what he's doing or she's doing, and then does it again. The analytic thinker seeks all the details, maybe asks a question, and understands fully before performing for the first time. The creative thinker integrates the combination into the way that they do and perform and makes it fit for them. So what kind of thinker do you think you are? Well, you're probably not just one kind of thinker. You probably have a little bit of this and a little bit of that, and maybe all three. But to cope with change, I'd like you to try and identify your most frequent thinking style and to use it positively, acknowledging it when you go to your new environment. And as you think about the different kind of thinkers, you're going to say, well, the logical thinker's probably going to have the most trouble with change, and that's true, because the creative thinker enjoys the challenge of the change. So, for example, let's think about you're going to have to go to a new studio. You've never been there before. Now, you've done this thing before. You've gone to new studios. That's not new. But to this particular one, and you haven't had to cope ever before with masks and sanitizers and what the new rules are. So the logical thinker would approach this by doing what they do normally and bring whatever they normally have and see what the situation is. Let's go and see what's down there. And then when you get there, the logical thinker says, oh, well, we need to adapt in this way, and does that and is coping. The analytic thinker goes online and gets all the information and asks maybe colleagues what to do. Have you been there? The analytic thinker follows the guidelines. And the creative thinker brings to the studio 2 or 3 green garbage bags and puts all his or her outer clothing in this one, and that's the dirty bag, and keeps the clean bag over here, and puts the 2 bags against the wall and puts masking tape around them to make sure that other bags don't come in contact with their bag. So those are different styles. It's fun to identify your own thinking style and to see how you're managing. It's also fun to see how your fellow dancers are doing. And this gives you a positive outlook in coping with the change.
Thank you, Bonnie. when we're thinking about change, as you pointed out, there's all different ways of and styles of thinking. It can be very disorienting and very difficult to figure out what we're going to do. But we also have the social and the mental, the mind, the emotional aspects, and the body sense that is very important, and how we balance and navigate the situation. So now I'd like to introduce Paula Thomson and Peter Lewton-Brain, who are going to give us some insights into the body aspect of navigating change in the vestibular system and how we might manage that. So welcome, Paula. Thank you for being here. And thank you, Peter, for joining us today. Over to you.
Thank you, Linda. And Peter, let's dive in together. First of all, I'm going to give a little bit of an explanation about the vestibular system. It forms prenatally, and it, in my mind, is one of the coolest systems in our body. It's located in our inner ear, and it integrates multi-sensory information. It's deeply connected to the brain and to the body, and it helps influence our interoception, our internal awareness of our body, and it helps us know where our body is in space. Now, researchers have shown that trauma symptoms actually negatively influence the vestibular system. There's a dysregulation, and sometimes just sitting in a wrong position will throw it all off. And some of the symptoms are nausea or dizziness, and psychologically, more anxiety and more depression. So the vestibular system is helping us physically and emotionally. It's a very deep regulating system. And small children get it. They just know. You flip up and down, you spin, you fall down, you get up, you throw your head around, you do it with eyes closed. And dancers are really, really similar. That's what they do as well. But because we've been more isolated and quarantined, we haven't changed our speed, we haven't changed our direction as much. And for dancers, especially contemporary dancers, where there's a lot of movement with the head shifting off the spine in Limon technique and a lot of contemporary ballet, we're not vertical. So we need our vestibular system functioning very powerfully. And if we have any trauma symptoms of numbing or dissociative symptoms like depersonalization, where you feel like you don't recognize yourself or the world feels a little bit dreamlike, these are normal responses to the world we're living in right now, but they are going to compromise our vestibular system. So the blessing is dance enhances our vestibular system in a powerful way. You may be at the grocery store and other people may have crappy vestibular system functioning right now, but we have to get that back. So Peter, do you want to add on to that? Because I know you have lots and lots of tools on how to help with that physically and emotionally.
Thank you, Paula. Yes, the vestibular system is fascinating because it's about time and space. So dancers, this is what we do every day, time and space. And during this confinement, we've had a very particular period where there's just not been much stimulation. We haven't had to go out. We may have gotten some sunshine from the window, but it's been one direction. It's not been multiple directions, multiple changing, these little movements we do all the time, and this stimulation. So people are losing their sense of time. You know, we're coming back, but we're showing up at meetings 15 minutes late. I just can't keep on time. In space, people are a bit clumsy. I live in France, and there have been much less kilometers driven, but many more accidents, which our cognition goes off with that. And so we're going to need to get this back. And this is something after a summer break, when you come back, your turns are very kind of, you don't know where you are in space because the vestibular system's not been stimulated enough in that time. And dancers have it stimulated a lot, all the movements forward, back, side, turning. And one of the most important parts, stimulations of this is acceleration, deacceleration, and spinning. So pirouettes, turns, are great stimulators for this vestibular system. And we're going to have a film of a dancer showing an exercise, which is an exercise, it's an old exercise that I learned from a Czechoslovakian teacher. It's very old, and it's for turning, but it's important because it's got the ocular part of the sensorial system and the vestibular together. So you're going to be changing focuses, accelerating, deaccelerating, focusing, accelerating, deaccelerating, focusing on different times. And she'll show that to you very good. And it's a safe exercise because you really shouldn't have been doing pirouettes in your kitchen. And when you come back, it's doing a penché or something can already be disturbing. But this is a great exercise, and to keep that for every time you come back from your holiday. So enjoy looking at that. Another part of the vestibular system, which is interesting, is they've done some studies in the Royal Imperial College in London with dancers, and they found that actually what dancers do is they're able to turn it off. So what dancers are doing when you're in training and you're trained is you're able to turn it off and you don't get so dizzy. So it's not like you have to get it stronger. You have to learn to turn it off again. It has to be stimulated, but then it's a capacity to not be disturbed by it when you get disturbed. And this also has effect on all the cognition, as we said before. So you might be a bit clumsy, take a bit of time for it. Again, this notion of time and space and where you are in the time and space is very important. So when you're doing your bar in your kitchen, it's just not the same. If you do an arabesque in your kitchen, it's not going anywhere. So the intention is off. Suddenly you're going to go back into a bigger space, and that intention can have much more meaning. So just give your time to adapt to dancing in different spaces. And this can be a great tool for later on, of adapting into a space. And you go on, as a professional dancer, you go on a stage and you have a look at the stage. What's the space today? How much intention do I need to bring to that? How do I deal with my time and space relationship with the music in that space? So these are great tools we can use for the future.
I would love to just add one other little thing, because we've been so visually dominant. We've been watching news, we've been on our screens, our eyes are doing everything. And sometimes for our vestibular system, we just have to close our eyes and let our vestibular system help us balance some of the tasks that we're naturally doing with our eyes all the time. So close your eyes sometime and move, especially when you get into a bigger space.
Thank you very much, Paula and Peter, for giving us some information about what our body does with all the information from the senses, and how we really need to respect the fact that we've been in a different situation, a different environment, and perhaps not using all the things that we usually use in the dance studio. And like Bonnie said, all these things are, we need to adapt to them, and we need to try and figure out how we get back to where we were before and make some adjustments. And one of the things that we need to make adjustments to is how we feel ourselves in space, and how we feel our feet on the ground, and what we're doing with our feet. So Dr. Kadel, could you give us some help in trying to understand how we may adjust to getting back to dancing, to getting back to the studio, to getting back to different kinds of floors rather than our kitchen floor and our living room carpet?
Thank you, Linda. I think that's a great introduction to what we call proprioception, or it's really joint position sense. So Paula and Peter talked so eloquently about the vestibular system and about how it interacts with your eyes as well. And that's part of balance, but also just how your individual joints are positioned in space is important for your balance. And if any of you have sprained your ankle, you may realize how after that recovers, it's harder to balance on that side. And part of the reason is that anytime there's trauma to a joint, or it's even immobilized in a cast or a boot and not used in the normal way, then those little mechanoreceptors around your joints that tell you what position your joint is in space, they need to be retrained. But the good news is it is trainable. And in fact, they've had some really good studies on people that did a home program after a bad ankle sprain, and even just by themselves, practicing balancing with their eyes closed can help them retrain the proprioception system. So you can start just facing the bar and closing your eyes and trying to do a single leg balance. And sometimes even starting with your heel only half an inch off the floor, which is actually a little more unstable than if you're all the way up onto demi-point or full point. So try to find an unstable position. You could even be on sort of a firm pillow, like a couch cushion or a firm throw pillow that's a little bit wobbly. But make sure when you're doing these kind of exercises that you're holding on to a counter, or you have a bar or something, so that you can safely remove your hands and close your eyes and then practice the balancing. So, I mean, the good news is you can train it. And I think we all probably need to do some of that practice, because as everyone today has been saying, we just haven't had that same stimulation. And our joints, even though you've tried some bar at home, you haven't been on the same floor as the studio. You may not be wearing the same slippers, or it's just not the same surface. And that is all part of the proprioception.
So thank you very much, Nancy, for those very useful tips for us to take back with us when we get back to the studio. And now I'd like to introduce again Dr. Bonnie Robson, who's going to provide us with the answer to the question, now how do I plan for these unexpected changes? So Bonnie, we're looking forward to hearing to what you have to say.
Well, 8 weeks ago, when we prepared for physical isolation, I talked about a daily journal, and I hope you're all using your daily journal and following up. And now as we ready ourselves to go back to doing more practice outside the house, so what are you going to give up? Remember, please, don't give up your sleep. You need 8 to 9 hours of sleep. And this is really important right now because it increases your immunity. Sleep increases your immunity. And this is not a time to be ill or to infect somebody else. Now, here's a psychological skill that you can enjoy and employ in anticipation of increased exposure to new situations. Each day, put something new into your plan. Now, think about that for a minute. What can I put in that's new? Well, I might walk a different way on my morning routine walk. I might go down another street. I might sing out loud to my tape as I go. That would be interesting. I might smile at everyone I pass, even though they can't tell I'm smiling at them. I might try that tea that I've got in the back of the cupboard that I've always kept there, and it was a funny looking thing. I want to try that now and see what it's like. So another thing to do with this new thing that you try every day is to write it into your journal. And at least once a week, you have an opportunity to read your accomplishments to yourself and admire yourself for doing it. Congratulations, look what I did that was new in my life. And give yourself a positive outlook for all that you've been doing.
And that was a great suggestion you had. Do one thing new each day. And if we can take that and do one thing new to help our vestibular system, our orienting in space, to help our proprioception, one small thing that's going to help us connect to something that we need to touch. And I hope that these strategies for you today have been useful to keep you safe and keep you healthy as you get back into the dance studio. And I'd just like to thank Drs. Kadel, Thomson, and Robson, and Mr. Peter Lewton-Brain, our president of the International Association for Dance Medicine and Science, for being here today. And I'd like to thank all of you for being here and keeping yourself informed, because that's an incredibly important thing for us to do, to be informed about what we need to do to get back. And our next webinar is going to talk about the psychological and psychosocial aspects of navigating the entry back into our lives, back into dance during the COVID-19 situation, which is going to be around for a little while. So thank you all for joining us. Please check the IADM's website and Facebook and Twitter pages for the links to this webinar, and we look forward to seeing you next time when we're going to continue with navigating the new normal and talk about the psychological and psychosocial issues. Thank you for being here, all of you, and for your contributions today. Goodbye for now. See you again next time.